Imagine two friends standing at exactly the same starting line. They are both 22 years old. They graduated in the same year, moved to the same city, and started their first full-time jobs only a few weeks apart. Their salaries are nearly identical, their lifestyles are similar, and their dreams for the future aren't very different either. If you met them during those early years, you would probably assume that their financial futures would look almost exactly the same. After all, neither of them is exceptionally talented, neither comes from wealth, and neither has some secret advantage. They are simply two ordinary young men trying to build a good life. Let's call them Jake and Michael. Like millions of people in their early 20s, they spend very little time thinking about investing. Retirement feels too far away to matter. Financial freedom sounds like something older people worry about, and the future itself feels distant enough that there is no reason to take it seriously. Right now, life is about enjoying their first paychecks, spending time with friends, and figuring out what adulthood is supposed to look like. One evening after work, Jake comes across a simple idea that seems almost too boring to matter. It isn't a story about becoming rich overnight. It isn't a strategy for picking winning stocks. It isn't a secret investment opportunity that promises massive returns. The idea is much simpler than that. Invest a small amount of money every month and keep doing it for a very long time. At first, Jake almost ignores it. $300 a month doesn't sound like the kind of number that changes lives. In a world filled with stories about millionaires, billionaires, and overnight success, $300 feels insignificant. Yet something about the idea stays in his mind. A few days later, he opens an investment account and sets up an automatic contribution of $300 every month into a simple index fund. No complicated strategy, no constant monitoring, no attempts to predict the market. Just a boring automatic investment that quietly happens in the background whether he thinks about it or not. When Michael hears about Jake's decision, he actually agrees with it. In fact, he fully intends to do the same thing. The only difference is that Michael decides to wait. He tells himself that he will start after his next raise, after a few expenses disappear, or after life becomes a little more stable. The logic sounds completely reasonable. After all, they are still young. What difference could a year or two possibly make? Neither of them realizes it at the time, but that simple question will eventually become one of the most expensive assumptions of Michael's life. The first year passes, and nothing exciting happens. Jake invests his $300 every month, occasionally checking his account and hoping to see something impressive. Instead, the growth feels almost invisible. Some months the market goes up, some months it goes down, and overall the progress feels painfully slow. There are no dramatic gains, no life-changing moments, and certainly no signs that he is becoming wealthy. Meanwhile, Michael enjoys having a little more money available every month. He upgrades his phone sooner than planned, takes a few spontaneous trips, spends more freely on entertainment, and enjoys the flexibility that comes with not locking money away into investments. None of these decisions are reckless. In fact, most people would consider them completely normal. And that is exactly what makes this story so important. Life-changing financial outcomes are rarely created by obviously terrible decisions. More often, they are created by small choices that seem harmless in the moment. As the years pass, Jake begins questioning whether investing is even worth the effort. Every month, $300 leaves his bank account, and every month the balance grows so slowly that it barely feels meaningful. Sometimes he wonders whether he would be happier spending the money. A better vacation would feel rewarding immediately. A newer laptop would improve his life right now. A larger apartment would make everyday life more comfortable. The sacrifices feel real, but the rewards remain invisible. This is where many people quit. not because investing is difficult, but because human beings naturally prefer rewards they can see. We like effort that produces immediate results. We like progress that feels tangible. We like feedback that tells us we are moving in the right direction. Investing offers almost none of those things during the early years. For a long time, it feels like nothing is happening. You sacrifice money today, wait tomorrow, and then wait some more. The account grows, but not fast enough to feel exciting. By the time Jake reaches 25, he has invested consistently for several years. His account is larger than before, but not large enough to impress anyone. If he showed the balance to friends, nobody would call him wealthy. Nobody would ask for investment advice. Nobody would see anything extraordinary. Meanwhile, Michael feels increasingly confident that waiting was the right choice. His income has risen, his lifestyle has improved, and from the outside, it appears as though he is making better use of his money. As both men move closer to their 30s, an interesting pattern begins to emerge. Jake continues investing, not because he feels motivated every month, but because the process has become automatic. The decision was made years ago, and now the habit carries him forward, even during the moments when he feels uncertain. Michael, on the other hand, continues telling himself that he will start soon. Every year feels like the year before. There is always another expense, another opportunity, another reason to postpone investing for a little longer. Neither of them realizes it at the time, but time is quietly becoming the most important character in this story. Because while Michael spends years waiting for the perfect moment, Jake spends those same years giving compounding exactly what it needs to work its magic: time. And although the effects are still hidden, they are becoming stronger with every passing month. For nearly a decade, compounding has been working silently in the background, building momentum that neither man can fully see. Soon, however, something is about to happen that will test Jake's patience more than ever before. A major market crash is coming, and when it arrives, years of progress will appear to vanish almost overnight. By the time Jake and Michael reach their early 30s, life looks good from the outside. Both have received promotions, both earned far more than they did when they first graduated, and both feel as though they're moving steadily toward a successful future. Yet beneath the surface, a quiet difference has been growing for years. Jake has continued investing every month without interruption. The amount has remained relatively small compared to his income, but the habit has survived every raise, every unexpected expense, and every moment of doubt. Michael still plans to invest someday, but someday has a way of staying just out of reach. Every year brings a new reason to wait. A bigger apartment seems necessary. A newer car feels justified. A vacation opportunity appears. Then another year passes. Then another. Before he realizes it, nearly a decade has gone by since he first told himself he would start investing soon. Then the market crashes. News headlines suddenly become impossible to ignore. Financial commentators talk about uncertainty, recession, and panic. Every day seems to bring another alarming prediction. Stock prices begin falling faster than most people thought possible, and for the first time in years, Jake feels genuinely afraid. He opens his investment account and sees something he never expected to see. Thousands of dollars have disappeared. Years of slow progress appear to be evaporating in front of his eyes. The account he spent nearly a decade building is suddenly worth far less than it was only months earlier. For the first time since he started investing, he wonders if Michael was right all along. Maybe investing really is too risky. Maybe all those years of patience were wasted. Maybe he should sell everything before things get even worse. The fear feels real, because losses always feel more powerful than gains. Human beings can tolerate missing an opportunity, but watching something they already own lose value creates a completely different emotional reaction. Every instinct tells Jake to protect what remains. Friends begin talking about moving money into cash. Coworkers proudly explain how they sold before things became worse. Social media is filled with predictions of disaster. Everywhere he looks, people are abandoning the very strategy he has followed for years. For several weeks, he considers doing the same thing. The temptation is overwhelming. After all, why continue investing when the market seems determined to punish everyone who participates? Why keep sending money into an account that appears to be shrinking? Meanwhile, Michael feels relieved. For years, he worried that he was falling behind, but now the crash seems to validate every decision he made. He watches the news and thinks about how much money he would have lost if he had started investing years earlier. In his mind, waiting suddenly looks like wisdom. While investors panic about falling portfolios, he feels protected. He still plans to invest eventually, but now he tells himself he will wait until the market becomes safer. It sounds logical, it sounds responsible, and once again, it feels like there is no rush. But something important happens over the following months. Despite the fear, despite the uncertainty, and despite every emotional reason to quit, Jake continues investing. Not because he feels confident, not because he knows what the market will do next. In fact, he is more uncertain than ever. He continues because the automatic investment remains in place, and because deep down he remembers why he started. He never expected investing to be easy. He never expected markets to move in a straight line. The entire reason long-term investing works is because most people cannot tolerate the periods when it feels impossible. So month after month, while the headlines grow darker, Jake keeps buying $300 every single month. Sometimes it feels foolish, sometimes it feels painful, but he continues. Then, slowly, almost invisibly, the recovery begins. The headlines stop getting worse. Markets stabilize. Fear begins fading. The same people who were predicting disaster start talking about opportunity. Prices begin rising again. At first, the gains are small, then larger, then surprisingly strong. What looked like permanent losses slowly transform into temporary setbacks. More importantly, every investment Jake made during the crash was purchased at lower prices. The money that once seemed doomed now owns more shares than before. Without realizing it, the period that felt like the biggest mistake of his investing life is quietly becoming one of the best financial decisions he has ever made. Several years later, Jake notices something that changes the way he thinks about money forever. For the first time, the growth generated by his investments is becoming meaningful. The account is no longer growing only because he adds money every month. The money already inside the account is beginning to do some of the work on its own. At first, the difference seems small. Then it becomes impossible to ignore. Some years, the growth generated by the portfolio is larger than the total amount he personally contributed. That realization feels almost unreal. For years, he was the engine moving the account forward. Now, the account has started developing its own momentum. The assets he owns are generating returns. Those returns are generating additional returns, and the cycle continues, whether he's working, sleeping, traveling, or spending time with family. Meanwhile, Michael's life continues following a different path. His income has increased substantially over the years, and his lifestyle has grown right alongside it. He enjoys many of the things he once dreamed about owning. Yet something frustrating keeps happening. No matter how much more money he earns, financial freedom never seems to arrive. Every raise creates temporary relief, but new expenses quickly fill the gap. A larger paycheck creates a larger lifestyle. A larger lifestyle creates larger obligations, and somehow the feeling of needing more never completely disappears. What he doesn't realize is that he has spent years improving his standard of living, while Jake has spent those same years increasing his level of ownership. By their early 40s, the difference between the two men is becoming difficult to ignore. From the outside, their lives still look successful, but beneath the surface, two completely different financial machines are operating. Michael's financial life depends almost entirely on the income he earns from work. Jake's financial life is increasingly supported by assets. By the time Jake and Michael reach their mid-50s, the difference between them is no longer hidden. For decades, their lives appeared remarkably similar from the outside. Both worked hard, both earned respectable incomes, both built careers, paid bills, raised families, and experienced the same ups and downs that come with adulthood. If someone had looked at them from a distance, they would have assumed they were on nearly identical financial paths. Yet, beneath the surface, a small decision made more than 30 years earlier had quietly created two very different futures. One afternoon, the two friends meet for coffee, something they have done countless times throughout their lives. The conversation begins the way it always does. They talk about work, family, old memories, and how quickly the years seem to have passed. Then the discussion turns toward retirement. For the first time, the topic feels real. Retirement is no longer some distant event waiting decades in the future. It is standing directly in front of them. And that is when Michael asks a question he has never asked before. He looks at Jake and says, "How are you feeling about retirement?" Jake pauses for a moment before answering. Then he says something that catches Michael completely off guard. He says, "Honestly, I think I'm ready whenever I want to be." Michael assumes Jake is joking, but as the conversation continues, he slowly realizes that his friend is serious. Jake explains that over the years, his investment portfolio continued growing far beyond anything he expected when he first started. The $300 a month that once felt insignificant became thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Eventually, through decades of consistent investing, market growth, and the extraordinary power of compounding, the portfolio crossed a milestone that once seemed impossible. It grew beyond $1 million. Not because Jake earned an extraordinary salary, not because he discovered a secret strategy, not because he found the perfect investment. The account grew because he started early, remained consistent, and gave compounding enough time to do what it was designed to do. For a moment, Michael sits quietly. He remembers the day Jake first told him about investing $300 a month. He remembers thinking it was a good idea. He remembers promising himself that he would start soon. And suddenly, all those years come rushing back. The raises he received, the purchases he made, the opportunities he postponed, the countless times he told himself that waiting another year wouldn't matter. Looking back now, he realizes that the biggest mistake wasn't spending money on vacations, cars, or experiences. The biggest mistake was believing he had more time than he actually did. Every year he delayed felt small while it was happening, but when those years were added together, they became one of the most expensive decisions of his life. What makes the realization so painful is that Michael was never irresponsible. He worked hard, he earned good money, he made sensible decisions most of the time, yet he underestimated the one variable that mattered more than almost anything else: time. Because time is the fuel that powers compounding. Without it, even large investments struggle to reach their full potential. With it, even small investments can become extraordinary. That is the lesson he wishes he had understood when he was 22. Not that investing requires huge amounts of money, not that wealth is reserved for financial experts, but that starting early matters far more than starting perfectly. As they continue talking, Jake admits something surprising. There were many times when he wanted to quit. There were years when the account seemed too small to matter. There were moments during the market crash when he genuinely believed he was making a mistake. There were periods when spending the money would have felt far more rewarding than investing it. The reason he succeeded was not because he was smarter than Michael. It was not because he had more discipline every single day.
It was because he kept going long enough for compounding to finally reveal its power. Most people quit during the years when nothing appears to be happening. They walk away just before the process becomes interesting. And that is the strange thing about compounding. For a very long time, it feels almost invisible. Year after year, the progress seems too small to get excited about. The account grows, but not dramatically. The sacrifices feel larger than the rewards. Then one day, after enough time has passed, everything changes. The growth becomes noticeable, then meaningful, then astonishing. What once looked like a tiny snowball rolling down a hill transforms into something powerful enough to reshape an entire financial future. The irony is that the most important years are often the years when the results look least impressive. As the afternoon comes to an end, the two friends leave the coffee shop and walk toward the parking lot. For a few moments, neither says much. They don't need to. The lesson is already clear. One friend spent decades giving compounding the one thing it needed. The other spent decades assuming he could always start later. Both worked hard, both earned money, both wanted a better future, yet their outcomes became dramatically different because of one simple decision repeated over and over again. Most people believe wealth is built through giant breakthroughs. They imagine it comes from finding the perfect investment, launching a successful business, or earning an enormous salary. Sometimes those things help, but more often than people realize, wealth is built quietly. It is built through ordinary decisions repeated consistently for an extraordinarily long time. The millionaire outcome that people admire at the end is usually the result of habits that looked completely unimpressive in the beginning. If there's one lesson hidden inside Jake and Michael's story, it's this: the hardest part of investing is not understanding how compounding works. The hardest part is continuing long enough to experience it, because compounding feels slow, it feels boring, it feels invisible. And then, one day, it doesn't. If you found this video valuable, make sure to like and subscribe. Every week, we share powerful stories and insights about money, wealth, economics, and the hidden systems that shape your financial future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.